And I have never heard someone go on a podcast and say, I take responsibility for why I was cheated on.
This understanding of what happened, all roles at play, especially mine, has catapulted me from what would have been one of the worst experiences of my life that I have so much hate and resentment towards still to this day, and potentially for the rest of my lifetime. I decided to use it as a springboard to catapult me into more aligned, higher version of myself.
If one of your friends came to you today and said, hey man, I just got cheated on, how would you support them?
I would tell them,
welcome back to Listen Before Love. We are so excited to have you here with us again for round 3, baby.
I'm super excited.
Are you?
The past 2 that we've done so far, incredible. They've gone on for 2+ hours each. We're going to shorten up a little bit, maybe get to the hour range today. But we usually come on here and we cook. I just love that we've been able to, thankfully, over time, because it didn't come easy, build up the confidence to just come on here and riff whatever feels right in the moment. There's no master planning here. There's no taking notes beforehand. We just hop on and talk about whatever feels right. And,
yes.
And that, I think, keeps it exciting for the both of us. It gets rid of all the pressure we have and just remind ourselves that we're perfect just the way we are. And if we just talk from personal experience and we just talk from what feels right to us in the moment, everything will work out perfectly.
It's so true. I wish you guys could join us for the car rides into this session, because Cam just puts on some smooth jazz and we vibe out. We in silence, by the way. We say nothing. We also don't really workshop any of what we talk about. It's just like I get an idea maybe an hour before of I think I'm going to go this direction today. And then sometimes that happens. A lot of the times it doesn't. So it's total flow.
I think it helps you and I just both, we got opinions, let's put it that way. We got some hot takes on just about anything and everything.
Listen.
We're creating a podcast on relationships, human nature, because it's something you and I both are thinking about all day, every day. And we've had so many personal experiences in this apparatus of knowledge or wisdom, whatever you want to call it. I'm kind of messing that up there. But whatever you want to call it, it's just, it's our lives. A melting pot
of emotions, psyches, relationship.
Yeah. And so we trust ourselves and not really need anything prior and just talk what feels right from the heart. And that's just an amazing feeling to have.
I know. And I think it's so incredible because you'd think, oh, you'll eventually run out of something to yap about, right? Wrong. There's always something that we're thinking about. It's just amazing how every single week in our relationship or in the relationships of people on the walks that I host, there's always something that kind of floats to the top of the little container that we're living in. And I think this week specifically on walk number 112, I brought the topic of, have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you wanted to, and why? And I got stampeded with people, men and women of all ages, who wanted to talk to me about this. And I think it's such a universal experience of knowing that you're not in the right place. And there's a little small whisper telling you this is not the right relationship, but you stay. And I really wonder, why do you think that happens to most people?
I think it all comes down to one thing, and that's fear. The only reason why we do things that aren't in our best interests, that don't feel right, is because of fear. Whether it's something from our past, it's actually happened to us with a former relationship, or even a dynamic we saw within our parents, whatever that may be, or just what society tells us. Especially for women, I feel like they have more of a timeline of when they should and shouldn't be married, when they should and shouldn't have kids. And part of that is biology, which makes sense. But oftentimes a lot of fear goes into whether people stay in a relationship or not, especially if it doesn't serve them.
Have you ever stayed longer than you should have?
Oh, man. We're going there?
Yes, we are going there.
Definitely. I think so. I would say, honestly, most of my relationships, that was the case. Yeah, I mean, even the smaller ones, like the ones I had in college, to say the least, where I never was really that interested in the person. I knew they weren't going to be my person, but it's just like, I'd rather be dating someone than be single. I'd rather have someone to go to dinners with and have fun with and go to parties with than be single. And so the convenience of having someone to cuddle at night or, have fun with on weekends, whatever it is, superseded whatever my gut was telling me felt right or wrong in those moments. I felt as if the consequences of staying weren't that big in those moments for me. There were other moments. It got to the point where I'm like, all right, this is a little bit too painful. This gut feeling is getting a little louder and louder. I need to finally listen to it. That actually make me finally break up with them. The one that really sticks out in particular, though, is this can go into a long story. Is the girl I dated before you, and that was a whirlwind. And it taught me so much about human nature. It taught me so much about myself, about other people. And thankfully, I look upon it now with an immense amount of compassion, empathy, and just understanding for everything that took place. But basically what happened was I was in this stage of life while I was still in college. And this is like the peak of me working, 50 plus hours a week at this job, along with doing school full time. I was making really good money for someone my age and was getting all the social recognition that at that time, 20, 21-year-old could ever ask for. And this girl kind of plopped into my life that I met off Hinge, off a dating app, that just had a profound perspective on life, definitely a free spirit. And there's a part of me that always wanted to live that way and be that way. I just didn't have the courage to do so. And so she thankfully, what I would say is held my hand through a part of life that I just wasn't familiar with prior. I never thought I'd allow myself to live. One in which, she traveled all the time. She was a nomad everywhere. She had her own online business. It did very well. And these were all things that I knew were possible. But again, I didn't really feel as if I was capable of doing. That, along with just had more life experience. She'd been through more. And there comes a level of wisdom through that I deeply wanted to understand better. And that, along with just really got along, made us really connect fast. And it led to a lot of ups and downs, but there was a pivotal moment that took place where she had moved into my college apartment, which I had her move in without asking permission from my roommates, which is not something I recommend. Lesson learned about, being afraid of having direct conversations. I was not really able to have those direct conversations back then as I would be able to now. And that started this whole thing. But we got very closely. We started living together, a handful of months in, and living out of my college apartment. So a very small room, and you should live with the college buddy. It's a very unique lifestyle there. And then I knew at this time that even before meeting her, and she had been to Bali, Indonesia beforehand, she lived there for a little bit. I already knew I wanted to go there. And so we're both adamant. And even though she had her own plans, she had travel plans for the next 6 months planned. So I knew that we wouldn't go there together. I knew that we both end up in Bali. And so knowing that I had someone to go with and kind of share this newfound experience with, of me taking this huge risk of leaving my job, leaving kind of the community I had there in Reno, and everything else that came along with the lifestyle that I knew and built for the past, at that time, 20, 21 years of my life, knowing that I'd kind of leave all that to go to a third world country, not knowing exactly how I'm going to make money or what life would be like. It made me feel so much more at ease knowing that I had someone that would be meeting me there a handful of months down the line, so that I had some source of familiarity. And we got to know each other very fast. And I would say that I definitely fell in love with her. It was someone who I had a really deep relationship with. And then, I get to Bali and shit kind of hit the fan, not just with her, but in my life. I was not prepared because I had never been out of the country before. I was not prepared to be thrown into a third world country. It is a complete different animal if you're not ready for it. And doing so alone, with no path, with no one there to help you. And I was completely lost. I still feel like I was a child or teenager at heart there. And I wasn't mature enough to really find my way and stay grounded. And it was very difficult. And then my first 24 hours in, I got into a pretty pretty ugly, pretty bad. I guess I don't know, call it surfing accident, but yeah, body surfing accident where I hit up against this boulder that created this huge gash on like my stomach, hip area. And I was rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, everything's all good. And that's a whole story in itself. I maybe tell them at a different time, which is wild. I don't know how they were able to do what they did. But anyways, that kind of debilitated me for a handful of months. I didn't call home and tell them about it. I kept it a secret because...
Why?
Because that's one of their biggest fears. You know, whether it's my parent, just like any other parent or friends or family, knowing that their loved one moved to a third world country and then immediately gets like injured and pretty badly injured is their worst case scenario. I didn't want anyone flying out and like, try to bring me back to the States, whatever it was. Thankfully, everything worked out perfectly, and I got the medical attention I needed, despite it being kind of a very lucky experience that was able to happen the way it did. But yeah, it was to the point where I couldn't sit comfortably. I can either be laying or standing, and it's very hard to be in the mood to travel and explore when you can't even sit in a car, or in that case, a moped, for that long without like this excruciating pain. That, along with just the pain of having an open wound, is not something great. And so I spent a lot of my time in my little shack that I had rented for a month to month. And as I'm sitting there, as I'm in my little shack, I get a call from this ex-girlfriend, at the time my girlfriend, who at that time had been traveling through South America. She called me and said, long story short, she said, last night I got drunk and cheated on you. I slept with their man. And immediately, this being the first time this has happened to me, this being the first person that, up until meeting you, this is the deepest love I've ever felt for someone else. And not only that, but I felt as if the one person that I was waiting on coming there with me to show, in this very literally painful moment, a sign of normalcy and a sign of safety. I can rely on someone else, because I knew no one there. Having her do something like that completely shocked me, and it really felt like a broken heart. And the only pain that I know similar to that is when I've had family members and friends pass away. It felt eerily similar to even that extreme. And that was just incredibly hard. And I'm thankful, because I had friends back home, some family members, my aunts, my mother, and other platonic girlfriends that I had, that answered the phone when I called. And they held the space properly, and they walked me through it properly. And I don't know what I would have done without them. But yeah, that really was a moment where I closed my heart to her. I closed my heart to a lot of aspects of life because of her. And I became very cynical of her, of the world. And it felt like my life had just shattered. Because not only was I in physical pain, but now mental, emotional pain, and feeling completely lost. I didn't have my college buddies or friends to go, shoot the shit with and get over it, or to talk to, or I couldn't even go, pick up my favorite pizza or burger. I was in a complete different environment, one that is a lot harder to navigate than America. And being so far from home and having those two things happen, I really feel was like the rock bottom of my life. And what I immediately did was try to grab onto things that felt familiar. And so I found somehow an Xbox in Indonesia, which is hard to come by, shipped that to my place, started playing that all day, never going inside this beautiful paradise that Bali is. I just stayed in my little shack and try to find any ounce of resemblance of home that I could. And I did that for weeks, months. And I'm very compassionate for that version of myself back then, because I know exactly what was going through my mind and understood everything happening perfectly. And after a handful of days, I realized, like, this, I can't say this is a bad person off of one thing they've done. This is, I know this person well. This is a good person who made a bad mistake. And I started connecting with her again through text messages and calls. And she, which I'm very grateful for and kind of shocked still to this day, had the courage to even call me and tell me that what happened. Because she could have kept it a secret and I never would have known.
Wow.
But she did, and that means a lot. And I can tell, especially on the phone, when it happened, that she was incredibly emotional and she felt incredibly shameful and guilty about it. And so I felt the human within her still.
Mm.
And then we just started talking again as, well, right after I heard the news, I immediately broke up with her. So we were no longer together. But we still kept in contact, and not to justify the behavior, but I got more compassion and empathy for what was going on and why it happened. And to be honest with you, I think it was so confusing because after I told people back home what happened, is a lot of them, understandably, because she quote unquote hurt me, they didn't want me to be near her at all. They wanted to keep me safe from her. But I had a mixture of feelings around her because I was still hurt. I hadn't fully forgiven her yet, even though I understood a little bit more. Hadn't fully forgiven her. But I still felt the human in her. And I was still in that moment desperately wanting to cling on to familiarity and safety. And so after a few months had passed and she came back to Bali when she was scheduled or planned on going after she did her other travels for business and things like that, I feel like I kind of fell back into her arms.
Mm.
And although, you know, she felt still immense amount of guilt what happened, and I still felt like I couldn't fully trust her, I think we were both in such a stage where we just felt as if we needed each other. And it's, you know, she's someone who I still deeply admire to this day, and someone who, as a person, I will always love, and very grateful for her and everything she taught me. But yeah, as time passed, through conversations with her, but most importantly, me just sitting alone in silence by myself, I realized that there's a lot that goes into cheating and betrayal. Something that's often not talked about, but especially for women, they emotionally cheat before they actually do an act of cheating. There is a separation that takes place in the relationship before a woman does something like that. For men, I think it's a little bit different. It still happens to some extent, but men, we're a lot more in our primal reptilian brains, that even if they love and adore their girlfriend, their wife, whatever it is, put under unique circumstances, most men, not all men, where there's little to no consequence around it, especially if they're drunk, especially if they're on some type of drugs, it means less to them than it does to women, because women are more in tune with their emotions, their intuition. Men, when you're separated from that, it becomes easier to make quote unquote undesirable decisions. But setting that aside is a different topic. In this relationship, I understood that I may have some responsibility to why this happened. And that's something I think a lot of people don't want to ask themselves about, because it's very, very easy, and society tells you you're the victim in the situation. it is 100% on them if something like that happens. And by no means am I trying to say that they're not responsible for the actions, because they deeply are. But it's not 100%. In this relationship dynamic, it's not 100%. Not saying it's 50-50, but it's not 100%. And so after time passed, I was able to forgive her when I saw my role in what happened. She was dating me at the most questionable, indecisive time in my life. This is where every other day I came home and was like, I'm going to keep my job. I can do it from Bali, or whatever. I can do this, this, and that. And the next day I was like, oh, no, I can't. I got to sell. And then somebody's like, oh, I can't wait for us to move in together. And some days were like, oh, I want us to live separate. Like, no, we shouldn't.
Wow.
And so I was giving her a very unstable foundation, along with, on other levels, doing things from a selfish point of view that caused an unsafe, uncertain feeling within her. And so, yeah, the examples of, I don't know, some days I commit to, yeah, let's move in together here. Other days I'm like, no, that's definitely a rocky foundation. But also, I was still selfish. And so the situation that comes to mind that happens so often is, if there, and this sounds so small, but it does make a big deal because it symbolizes a lot. If there's one piece of chicken left on the dinner table, I'm quick to grab it. I was not like, hey, would you like it?
Right.
It's little things like this that I insisted on putting myself first above her, which is not what a woman needs to feel safe. A woman needs to feel safe by knowing that the man they're with is putting the women themselves above himself. And that just was not there because I was still a boy. I was only a child growing up. Like, I got my way all the time. And no matter who it was, it's like, I'm not putting you in front of me. And so that happening on the micro level when it comes to, piece leftover chicken on the dinner table, or a more macro level, all those things, I can see why it would lead to a shaky foundation when it comes to trust between her and myself. That, the actual acts taking place in a relationship, along with a person's past, are met together to help them decide on which behavior to do going forward. And so this behavior that I exuded, I feel as if I was doing for a lot of the women in my past too. I didn't know at the time, I wasn't conscious of it, but now I see that being the case. And some of those women had pasts to where they cannot trust their own family members. They cannot trust their old friends. They cannot trust ex-boyfriends, what they've done to them, whatever it may be, that is creating an environment to where they are quicker to distrust the person they're with. And that could be that's trauma, right? And that could be something violent, sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal, emotional abuse from especially male figures in life. Or that could be just something smaller. But whatever it is, that's compiling into one's decision to emotionally cheat. It's coming from a feeling of survival. I don't feel safe enough here, and I feel safe with this man at this moment, so I'm going to be with him instead. Whether it's for a night or for an entire relationship, whatever it may be. So when I started to realize that I was acting like a child, and she saw a man that was attracted to her, any reasonable woman, I understand why that would happen. Now, I say that not to condone cheating. That is something you and I are deeply, deeply, deeply against. But I'm all for, and always will be, taking full responsibility for our part in everything we're a part of. Whether if society would dictate us as the victim or perpetrator, I am for understanding our own responsibility taking place in every situation. And so I'm not saying that she is fully exonerated of what she did in those moments, because it was still on her, and it was still a moral dilemma that took place, and she decided to cross the line. And I know her and potentially other relationships that have happened to, they're full aware of that. What I am here is to shine a light on the fact that when this type of behavior happens, or other types of behavior, we may be playing a larger part in it than we believe. And so when I was able to see through that lens, I was able to see a lot more compassion and empathy for her and in the grand scheme of things, other women I've dated, because I looked upon why in their rational mind would they feel as if this is the right action to take. And then when you think about someone's past, you think about what you know other men in particular, but other people have done to them. When you think about what they've been told through society, when you think about all these other things that have taken place, when you think about how you've treated them, it made it much easier for me to forgive. So that was a big part of it. Another big part of it was that I was still living in fear. Back to this whole concept we're talking about. A part of it was I had done the work to help me forgive her. And also, I was alone on the island, could barely move, physically walk. And I was ready to grab onto any feeling of familiarity that I could. That fear, along with the newfound awareness of what happened, made me feel like I need to get back together with her.
Wow.
And to be honest with you, I know I'm rambling on here, but
No, thank you for sharing.
of course, yeah. And that's like, it was definitely one of the harder parts of my life. And I can say it now without getting extremely emotional, because I've really felt through all this. And I really do feel I'm at a place where I fully forgive her for everything she's done. And I see the great human that she still is, has always been, who has made a mistake in her life, just like all of us. And because I see the part I may have played within it. And hopefully one day I'd love to, have a conversation with her in front, on a camera and really talk about it, because I think it's going to be really healing. But yeah, so that happened. And then as soon as she came back, we got back together, and we were there dated for another almost a year, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, almost a year. I think a little bit less than a year, but around a year.
Did you initiate that, or did she?
I asked her to be my girlfriend again. Yeah.
Really?
I did.
Wow.
And to be honest with you, even though I felt as if my trust hadn't been fully built back, like I was probably operating at like 70% trust. Like I knew this wouldn't run away with my credit cards or anything like that. Like I had that level of trust there at 100%. But the feeling of, oh, this is my person, or the feeling of her, going on a one-on-one lunchtime with another guy, that was not there.
Wow.
I was very like, no, you're not doing that. Like
Really?
that level of trust.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And yeah, we operated that way. And to be honest with you, I am so grateful that I got back together with her, because the experiences I had with her following led to so much growth. And if I didn't get back together with her, I probably would have moved back to my hometown a few weeks later. And I would not have had the extra plus year in Bali that really redefined how I view life. It led to my most profound experiences.
Wow.
I'm not saying it's impossible and I wouldn't have had those without her, maybe. But because she was there, and because of her mindset towards life of trying new things and having the courage to understand our highest version of ourselves and go towards that, I was able to go on a journey which I now regard as the beginning of my spiritual journey, my awakening, that I may not have had in my life, or at least in that season of life, if it wasn't because of her. And what I've learned on that experience when we were back together, whether it was between our relationships or just in general that we haven't dated at the same time, those have been the experiences that have completely changed the trajectory of my life. And so I would never say, oh, I regret getting back together with her.
Yeah.
Because whether it was with her or just a byproduct of us being together, I feel like a completely different person because of that. And I remember we started to realize, I'm speaking for myself here, but I believe she realized too, that like a handful of months before we broke it off, there were some like core incompatibilities. I realized after traveling a lot, like I don't want to travel. Like I love it and it's cool, but like I don't need to see the world. I'm okay.
That's like the opposite of every dating app profile on earth. Like I've never seen someone say, I don't like to.
Yeah. I'm like, these airports suck. We do this all the time? Like twice a month? Are you kidding me? And like the amount of time we're spending around like getting a new memory chip or data chip for a phone to get internet. Yeah. I'm like, I have to find like a good water, find especially third world country, all these other kind of BS. I'm like, I don't want to spend my life doing this. I want to be back in America. I want to live in the suburbs. I want to like have my favorite car that I love cars. I want to know where I'm getting my water, know where I'm getting my food. They can trust that. Like, I didn't
look at you now, baby.
I know, I'm back.
You're living the dream.
I'm back. Suburbia.
Master manifester, baby. Come on now.
But yeah, and so there are some core differences of how we want to live our life. And also like, I think mutually we didn't have a level of trust that we needed to stay together long term. And it didn't feel like my person. And
can I explore that a little bit?
I'd love to, yeah.
So this word trust, I find really fascinating in this situation, because did you feel like you fully trusted her before that happened?
In that part of my life, yes. That level of trust that I had for her at that time was the highest amount of trust that I knew at that time. So that was 2021's version of 100% trust. That trust cannot be compared to the trust I had with you.
What's the difference?
You can only trust others to the same level you trust yourself. Just like everything else, as within, so without. And so because I didn't trust myself fully back then, because I was so wishy-washy on literally everything in my life, I couldn't fully trust anyone external. But now that I've built myself into the person over the past handful of years, where I deeply trust myself when it comes to my gut, my intuition, what I speak, how I act, knowing that I will fall through on anyone and anything that I set my mind to, it has increased the capacity of trust I have for myself, and therefore allows me to trust others much more. So even the same people that have been in my life this entire time, my father, my mother, my close friends, I trust them more now than ever before.
Wow.
Same for love. Of course, capacity for love has changed the more I love myself, but also for trust. And so now I have a newfound level of trust for everyone around me, especially you, to a level that is like incomparable to my past.
Thank you, baby.
Of course. I think what happens is when we close our heart on someone. So in that moment when I found I was cheated on, my heart fully closed against her. I wanted to label her the devil. I was in a stage where not only was I incapable of trusting her, but I was incapable of trusting everyone else. And when I closed my heart on love towards her, I closed my heart towards love on the far majority of others, most people. But now that I've reopened both for her and for everyone else in the trust, it's a new level of romance, a new level of partnership, a new level of just living, where you can live life from a place of offense as opposed to a place from defense. And it has completely changed the game in every aspect of life, but especially my relationships.
Wow. It's also interesting. So I've never cheated on anyone, and it has never been in my awareness for my relationships. And I just want to bring that up because I notice when we watch our shows, so one of the shows Cam and I love to watch is Married at First Sight. There was this one couple on, I believe, the Boston season, where the guy made part of his identity running around with a bunch of different women. I'm not going to at him here. You can go watch it if you're curious. Don't want him coming from me.
It was Olajuwon, season 24.
I'm sorry, Olajuwon.
Season 14.
I'm sorry. But it was interesting because, not to at him like that, but, you know, he put it on national television. All right, listen. So he made it a part of his identity in multiple episodes that he cheated on women. He was like, you know, I used to run around my past. I had a lot of women. I had an alter ego named Isaac because I would run on so many different women that I'd use a different name. And he'd talk about this like a lot.
Like a badge of honor.
Yeah, it was a badge of honor. And this guy, you know, is getting married to a stranger at first sight. And I found this interesting because in the season, there comes a moment where the woman he's married to has her phone. He's going through her phone for some reason and sees a dating app. Now, they're married, right? But they had been married 2 weeks ago. The app didn't have a profile. It was clearly just an old app. And he freaks out. He starts yelling, raising his voice. The trust almost went like out the window immediately. And it was so interesting to me because he made his identity being a cheater. And so when he sees something that he's done in the past, he is going to project his own behavior onto the person he's with. And I'm only bringing that up because I have never, ever assumed, and I don't think I ever would assume, maybe that makes me naive, that I'm being cheated on. Unless it is like in my face, like super in my face, undeniable, or the person straight up tells me, I don't think I'd ever have a moment of suspicion where I'm like stalking the girls he's following, or I'm like reading through his text messages or emails. I've never done that before, ever. So I wonder, did you have that at all in your awareness when she had said that to you? Was it like a complete shock? You never would have expected that to happen? Or where were you there?
It was not in my awareness at all. I felt very committed to her. And that's like, cheating is never something that I even entertained, to be honest with you.
Wow.
For relationships. And so it was completely out of my awareness.
But when it came to you, it was like, whoa, this is like completely outside of my reality.
Yeah, it's like being hit by a bus.
Wow.
It feels a little bit different when you see the bus coming. There's nothing you can do about it. But when you're walking with your head in your phone, your eyes on your phone, and you get hit by a bus, that's how it feels. Yeah.
Had you ever cheated on someone?
No.
Isn't that interesting? I wonder, for anyone listening to this, and I say this with no judgment, because I think one of the reasons it hurts so deeply and viscerally to be cheated on is if you don't have that in your past, like you are not a cheater, it literally doesn't even feel possible that you'd be cheated on, because you're not thinking in your awareness, oh, I'm gonna cheat. That's just not how your reality is. Yeah. So it's like you're coming up against something that literally feels like, what? Where did this happen? Who? Why? How did it get to this point? And I think that that's a really interesting space, because I can sit here and say that if that had ever happened to me, I mean, I think at least at this point, I think I would immediately be like, how did I miss it?
Definitely. Like,
what am I missing in the situation that created the conditions for this to happen? Which kind of goes back to your idea of accountability, where you, and I'm curious about this too, this is why I bring this up. Where in the timeline of things did you start looking at your role in being cheated on?
That took a handful of months after. Most people, it takes their entire lifetime. They never look at themselves and the role they played in whatever type of faulty relationship they had. But it took a handful of months. I think it was definitely very useful for me to be alone almost, although it could have happened also around a good group of friends and support system. Being alone and having, whether I wanted to or not, a lot of time of solitude made me really feel into it, really think about it. And knowing this woman in her past and thinking about all my relationships as a whole and knowing their past, a lot of their behavior makes sense. It makes sense. And we need to allow ourselves to get there to properly forgive someone, to have compassion and empathy for someone. A good therapy session, a good therapist would humanize anyone who has done something wrong to you. We can't call them a bad person or the devil or whatever it is. We need to say this is a good person who made a bad mistake. And then understanding, wait, why would they make that mistake is crucial towards anyone in their forgiving process, in their loving process, and compassion, empathy process, whatever that is. And thankfully, I think just intuitively, I kind of felt that to be right in that moment. I think naturally when you give yourself the time and you don't allow the friend group chat to dictate your mental space of how you should feel about this person, and you allow it to just kind of feel into, wait, I know this person. I know it better than anyone else I've ever met. My best friends don't know her or him as well as I do, whatever it is. I know this person. It makes a lot more sense. Again, doesn't justify it, but it makes a lot more sense.
If one of your friends came to you today and said, hey man, I just got cheated on, how would you support them?
I have had someone like that come to me, and a girl come to me about a guy. But either way, I think it's universal. Guy to girl, girl to guy. I would tell them, well, first I'd ask them, how are you feeling right now? And to make sure they can get whatever's on their chest off their chest. So if that's anger, that's shame, that's sadness, that's guilt, that's some feel relief, whatever it may be, I want them to fully feel that and understand that I'm not judging them for however they feel. It's okay. It's valid how they feel. And then the only advice I would give them, if they asked for it, is to make sure that the decision they make around this person or in the next step of life is coming from a place of love and not fear. And by coming from a place of love, because you love this person, doesn't mean you get back together with them. Coming from a place of love means I love myself enough to know that I'm not going to allow this to happen, and stepping away from that person. Context is incredibly important, but there oftentimes is certain behavior that's, not saying is unforgivable, because everything is unforgivable, but certain behavior can be shown in which people don't deserve a second chance. I think it's very important to note, because there's this thing of, do you believe in second chances?
Yeah.
What do you mean you do or don't believe it? It's a thing. It exists. And based on the situation, we can decide whether that applies to what we're experiencing. And second chances, I believe, are great when they're coming from love, terrible when they're coming from fear.
Ooh. Wow.
And so when they're coming from fear, it lowers the level of trust everyone involved has. Even the person who, so let me say it this way. If a man cheats on his wife or cheats on his girlfriend multiple times, and it's obvious, it's put in front of her face, and yet she still crawls back to him, whether they want to admit it or not, he has lost some respect for her.
Ooh.
Same in reverse. Same probably what happened for me. Definitely actually what happened for me.
What do you mean?
Because when we do that, in my personal opinion, they can't look at us the same way if we were to get back together with them. Especially from a place which I was of a crying little boy that was fearful. And so I felt as if not only had I lost trust for her, but she's lost respect for me. And that is what led to the inevitable end.
The second time you felt.
A handful of months later, I remember a long night, a lot of drinking involved, back when I used to drink. I was listing all things that was going wrong. And then the inevitable conclusion of that would be like, we need to break up. But at the very end, I felt how it would feel to not have her in my life. And I'm like, and that's why we need to stay together.
Really?
Yeah.
When was this?
This was almost a year after cheat on. And in that moment, she understood, because it was such a misaligned conclusion to everything I said before, that me saying that was coming from fear. And she also realized, like, hey, this isn't gonna work.
Really?
And so she, I would say at the end, even though I said it's relatively mutual, she really cut off.
Because she knew that you were just there out of comfort.
Exactly, out of fear.
So you had this conversation where you were listing off everything that felt wrong.
Yeah.
And then ended it with, and that's why we should stay together.
Yeah. And
Wow.
not saying I was pointing everything out. She was pointing everything wrong in me too.
Wow.
Around how we'd act and how me as a person just wasn't stepping into my highest version of myself. I felt like I was lying and I was doing everything I could to kind of like not do shit with my life.
Mm.
And so she called it out within me. And
was that true?
Yeah, everything she said was true. Yeah.
Well, what did she say?
She knew I was in a place where I felt almost paralyzed with fear, even though I wanted to be more and do more. I knew I could be. Everything I'm doing now, I knew I could.
Mm.
That time I just was lying to myself. And she's pretty much just calling me out my bullshit.
Like writing, creating.
Exactly. And I had a million excuses for everything I wasn't doing. And she just called me out on it. So the stories I tell myself and tell others of why nothing was being done, she just called me out every single one. She was right about everything. And so it was this incredible moment of clarity. At the very end, I was like, and that's why we need to be together. And then she was like, that was probably the last ounce of loss of respect that she had. That was like, I can't be with someone like that.
Oof.
And that was big. I felt down bad after that. Yeah. And so thankfully, this relationship really did feel like a twin flame. Not that definition, but the real definition of twin flame, where like it was a huge test. So many lessons learned at every stage. When it came to cheating, when it came to the highs and lows and how to treat a woman. I felt she was like a legit woman as I was still a boy.
Mm.
That when that dissonance is there, good luck.
She tried to hold you to a higher standard than you were holding yourself.
Exactly.
And you couldn't reach it.
Exactly.
But you knew you could in the future.
And she knew I could.
And that's a really, really big trap that I think women fall into. I was just talking the other day on the walk how when we see someone for their potential rather than the reality of the person they are in front of us, that gap, we need to be completely at peace if they never change and they never step into the person we think they could be. And there's having faith in someone. And I have so much faith and belief in you. And you've also proven to me through your actions that you are the man that you say you are. And you are the man that you say you want to be. And you take actions to build that man every day. Mm-hmm. And so that's why my trust in you, my belief in you is so strong. Now, I can empathize with her in that if you were wishy-washy and some days you're on, some days you're off. And I don't mean that in a sense of like, you have to be doing something all the time. I don't mean that at all, but I mean that more so in your vision. If some days you're like, I think I want to do this. And the next day you're like, nah, never mind. That kind of wishy-washy. Or we should do this. Or, we should move in together. No, just kidding. Maybe we should wait a couple months. It's that kind of indecisiveness that really creates a sense of like roller coaster instability in a woman's emotional core. And it's amazing to even think about you being emotionally unstable in the foundation that you were setting for women, because you set such a rock solid foundation for me. And I wonder, given that, what was the gap between the end of this relationship and our relationship?
A year plus.
A year plus. What happened in that gap that made you go from being a man who was setting an emotionally unstable foundation to a man who always does what he says he's going to do and makes me have unwavering belief in him?
I think, honestly, it was what I learned from that relationship. that relationship taught me everything you need to know about where I'm falling short, because it was a perfect mirror for who I was and who I was not. So imagine everything you feel around me, all the things that tell you about the future, the potential, the vision, but none of the action to back it up. So imagine the vision, probably times 10.
It's the worst.
With no action.
Oh, God.
And every day you're like, sounds good. But what are you doing?
Where is it?
What you haven't left the couch in 3 weeks. Like, imagine that. Imagine how frustrating that could be, especially when you see the potential in me.
Yeah.
Especially when you know everything that I'm envisioning and saying can happen. That is what I think her predicament was, and that's what I felt within me after I had time to reflect on everything. And so, thankfully, I had experiences after we had broken it off, after I guess we can call it she broke up with me because of that end of the conversation there, where I realized it's now or never. I got to get my shit together, because if this same day, this lack of action happens over and over again for 10 years, and I'm now 32 as opposed to 22,
wow,
I would consider killing myself.
You felt that strong?
I felt that strong. I'm like, I'd rather die than not see any level of my potential. And so I'm like, this is square one. This is rock bottom. How am I going to build myself? And so I said, this day forward, to keep the word to myself. If I say it, it's happening. To everyone and everything. That means I'm going to this event, I'm going to this event. If I said, yeah, I'll go, I'm going, no matter what. If I say I'm going to eat this or do this, I'm going to do it, no matter what. And it starts with little things. It starts with getting up at the same time every day. It starts with getting up at 6 a.m. Tell yourself I'm getting up at 6 a.m. And over time, you literally add on to things as you're reinforcing the fact you're going to fall through them. So sometimes you get started with something basic as I'm going to get up at this time, I'm going to fall asleep this time. And then I'm going to add on a workout to that. I'm going to add a walk to that. I'm going to add on, eating the proper amount of food or type of food or water. I always start with the very basics. Food especially is very, very important for this. But when you compound those small daily wins, you build the confidence within yourself to be able to follow through on that vision of the potential is possible.
Because you're gaining trust in yourself with every step.
Exactly. And people feel it. Women feel it. Other men, future business partners, friends, they feel it within you. Because you can't you can't fake confidence forever. Fake till you make it's absolute bullshit. The only people you are faking with that are also people that are faking it. Real, no real. Fake can't see the other fakes. And so when I realized that, and I, day by day, improved the confidence in myself, I knew that I would treat women a certain way. I'd give them a foundation of safety and trust so that they can operate from their highest version of themselves. I knew that I can give myself safety and trust that I was not going to do things to sabotage myself. Yeah. I wasn't going to drink when I didn't want to drink, wasn't going to smoke, wasn't going to do the drugs, wasn't going to do the lack of healthy actions that would put me a few steps back in life when this really felt like a season of getting forward. And just over time, you completely reshape how you view yourselves and therefore how the world views you and how you view the world. And so that's really what's happened over the past 18 months or so that has finally allowed me to wake up every single day and be like, if this continues for 10 years, 2 years later, so now I'll be 34. If I continue this exact day, I'm on the path to reach my potential, to be the highest version of myself. And that within itself gives me all the confidence in the world that no matter what predicament I'm put in, I'm going to operate from a place with the highest level of morals and values, and I'm going to follow through on whatever it is the world sets out for me or I set out for the world. And when a man has that level of confidence, not only in his actions for business and health, but how he's going to treat people, the most important one, the world becomes his oyster. Everything he could ever want becomes his. That's when he attracts the right person. And so that's how I did it. And I give, even though it's hard to say that like being cheated on has benefited me, or being broken up with like that has benefited me, I have chosen to take responsibility for the roles I played in those situations and looked upon it as a learning lesson, a building block, the biggest building block towards the person I am here today.
That's beautiful, baby.
Thank you.
Well, it worked because I'll just say, like, what a blessing that you were cheated on. Because, which is that's a crazy sentence to say. That, wow, I don't think I've ever seen someone say that before. But it was a blessing because it took losing a woman who was trying to hold you to a higher standard that you were holding yourself to make you say, you know what? I'm sick of my own bullshit. I'm not doing what I'm saying I'm going to do. You know, confidence whispers, insecurity screams. And people who have the most to say.
Confidence whispers, insecurity screams. Put that on a t-shirt. That's
mug dropping zone. But when you have someone, and I'll at myself, I mean, God bless some people listening to this, my good friends would hear me blabber and yap on and on and on and on and on, including you, about leaving my job and starting the newsletter for the profiles and the walks and starting a podcast and starting a newsletter. I yap all the time. And it's coming from a place of insecurity. It's coming from a place of, I know that I have a vision. I know I can do these things, but I'm emotionally not ready to do them. And I also have not done the work to become emotionally ready to do them. So if you have someone in your life who is telling you the same dream over and over and over again, that's what's happening. The words they're speaking are affirmations, but without an emotional foundation of self-trust, it will never manifest into the reality. You can go on and on and on about all these grand visions in your life and how you're going to launch this, do this, get this much money, find the woman. But if you're not establishing the small daily habits every day to create that trust in yourself, you will never create an environment for those things to happen.
I completely agree. And you and I are the king and queen of affirmations. You know? Like literally we do it every single day by ourselves, twice a day.
Yes.
And we have a community where we have people come on. It's the gratitude affirmations every single weekday. Like we're really about this affirmation life.
Yeah.
But there is no point to having affirmations if you're not going to follow through on the actions it takes to make what you are affirming into your reality.
Exactly.
It actually is worse because every single affirmation you do with no action behind it is actually decreasing the level of trust you have in yourself. Because if every day you're like, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to treat people like this, I'm going to do this and this, but then you do the opposite. Your bullshitter that's ingrained in all of us in our subconscious mind is proving that everything we say not only doesn't happen, but we actually do the opposite. That is huge, and people don't understand that.
And you're creating distance between who you are today and what you're going to have. And I think if you look at New Year's resolutions, this happens every single year. You go to the gym during the first few weeks of January, everybody's gung-ho, oh yeah, let's do it. New Year's resolution to get super fit, go to the gym. And then come February, population cut in half in that gym. Come March, probably cut even more than that, probably into 25% of who it was. And why is that? Because if you take on too much at one time and you go from literally 0 to 100, I go from doing no days in the gym per week to 5 days per week, your reality is going to shift so fast that you don't even have the space to hold that. So that's why in the practice that we do with people all over the world, every weekday at 8 a.m. called Great Morning, we not only do gratitude, which lays the foundation, the emotional foundation for I love who I am and what I have. I love it. And I am grateful for it. And I can see through every lens of my life that there is something that I have in front of me that is making my day better, that is giving me gratitude, joy, abundance. And I know that I have what I have and I can create more of it. So you're setting that emotional foundation with gratitude. Then secondly, you're saying things hopefully from the heart that just come to you in that moment that either affirm who you are, who you're becoming, or they're a future version of you that may be a little bit in the distance that you want to call in. And the last part of this cake, so if you think about it as a pyramid, you got gratitude, affirmations, and then accountability. It's the smallest part of this pyramid because you take a micro step. That's why it's the smallest part. It's a really important part because, like we said, if you have affirmations without doing anything, affirmations without accountability is just you eroding your own trust in yourself. So that one small action towards the reality you want to bring into your life is what matters the most. And it doesn't have to be anything big. You start with just one commitment a day. That's it.
And even though you said it's the smallest step, it is the only step in that triangle, in that cake, whatever you call it. It is the only thing moving us forward.
Yeah.
So we can be affirmations and gratitudes while sitting on the couch all day, 24/7. We're not going to get anywhere.
Exactly.
It's that small step that actually gets us to where we want to go.
Exactly.
And the more we trust ourselves, the more we take on our plate. And the more we take on our plate in that terms, the sooner we will get to where we want to go.
Exactly.
But to circle it back to what you're saying, the question you prompted at the walk, I think it's now incredibly clear. If you have, let's say, an ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend that wants to get back together, or you're debating on whether to trust this person again, whatever it may be, they'll always say that I'm going to change or I have changed. Because they know that if they were the same person that you broke up with or that cheated on you, whatever it was, you're not going to get back together with them. So you need to prove that they've improved. But if you haven't seen the action, don't listen to them. They could just be bullshitting you again. They're bullshitting themselves. They could be bullshitting you again. And so if they say, I've changed, I'm going to change, there's no such thing as going to change. So have you done it or not? And most of the time, they haven't. It's just a prettier sentence around the same bullshit or the same lack of action.
But what if,
Oh, please.
there isn't enough time to be able to tell? What if this whole big thing blew up 2 months ago? And I'm going to give you a very specific story here, and I want to get your take on it. So a couple weeks ago, I was hosting the walk here in Austin, and it's 50 to 100 people who are walking 5 miles, and everyone brings a topic or a situation they'd like perspective on. And we all go off on our adventure on the trail and talk about it. And I found myself in a conversation with a woman who brought the topic, do you believe in giving second chances in relationship? And she ends up floating into my conversation. And she's like, you know, there was something kind of funny that happened earlier before we started walking. And I was like, what? And she's like, at the very beginning of the walk, you came up to greet me and the guy standing next to me. And I had this moment where I couldn't tell if they were a couple or not. Because sometimes it's like you can't tell. And usually in that moment, 99% of the time, I will not assume they're a couple because it can be incredibly awkward. But something in my intuition said, no, like make it awkward. I don't know why at the time, but I was like, oh, are you guys together? And then it was super awkward. She's like, tripping over her words. And then he goes, I'm working on it. And I was like, what an interesting interaction. So she's like, you remember that moment back there with that guy? Well, I've got a story for you. She says, this is a crazy story. She says, did I ever tell you how I found the walk? And I was like, no. How? She's like, one morning, a couple weeks ago, I get woken up at 7 a.m. by my boyfriend who's leaving for work. And he breaks up with me and just says, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be with you. I don't feel in love with you anymore. They had been dating for years. And he just packs up all his stuff. They lived together and moved out of the place they lived together. And this was completely shocking and out of nowhere. She did not see it coming. So she's distraught. She takes her puppy that they had just bought together to go on a walk. And of course, she runs into the walk here in Austin. We do these intro circles where everybody gathers around and shares their gratitudes and what they want to talk about that day. And she passes by our group and goes up to this guy, Mark, who is a regular. He's been over 50 times to the walk, and goes, "Hey, like, what are you guys doing? Like, is this a church? Is this a cult? Like, what's happening here?" And he's like, "Oh, and he's the best spokesman for the walk. Mark is the best hype guy." And he's like, "Oh no, it's this walk. We walk 5 miles. We have great conversations. You got to join." And she's like, "My puppy isn't going to be able to make it, but I'll be back next week." That's how she found the walk, the day she got broken up with. Okay. Now, the next time I'm seeing her live in this conversation, she goes, "The guy that you had that awkward moment with today, who said, 'I'm working on it,' was the guy who broke up with me weeks ago." I was like, what? So this man ends up reaching back out to her after, I believe, 2 months of being separated. He broke up with her, blocked her number, completely went ghost. And then 2 months go by and he reaches back out and says, "I made a horrible mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I don't even know what came over me, but I need to be with you. And I am so sorry for all the pain that I caused you in doing that. And I will change." And she was honest with me, because this is happening over a course of 5 miles. I was with her the entire walk. So that's about an hour and a half, 2 hours of talking. Over time, this is what's interesting with women. Women won't often volunteer things that make their partner look bad. It's maybe same with men, but I think especially women, because they believe so tightly in the potential of the man, they will not share with you the things that make him look bad, because that goes against the vision of him in her mind. So after I ask a lot of questions very lovingly, she shared with me their relationship was not very good. That he would say he was going to do all these things and he wouldn't. That he wasn't planning dates anymore. He wasn't showing her love or affection. He wasn't buying her gifts or acknowledging her birthday. He was dropping the ball in all the things that show somebody that you love them. And most importantly, to her, after this whole thing happened, he wasn't really expressing an interest in understanding why. Like, why did you do that? What emotionally was happening inside to cause you to have this moment where you just up and left me? So there's the growth gap starting to happen, where she wants to know why. She wants to grow. She wants to look inward. And he just wants to almost like put a blanket over top of all of it and just say, "I don't really want to go there. I don't really want to go to therapy. I don't really want to do any of that. But like, I know I made a mistake and I need you back." And she tells me all of this and says, "Should I give him a second chance? My intuition is telling me I need to." And this is what's really interesting, is that's not your intuition. That's your fear. That's fear of the unknown, fear of leaving a comfortable situation. That's scarcity, that you won't be able to find someone better, someone more aligned, someone who loves you the way that you deserve. That is what is talking to you. And you're confusing it for your intuition because you haven't sat alone with yourself enough to be able to clarify the signal, to be able to tell, oh, this is coming from all these stories rather than my actual intuition that knows what the right answer is. And here's the real tea of the situation. If her intuition was really telling her to take him back, she wouldn't have brought that as a topic at the walk.
It's not something to question if it's not a question.
Because you don't need anyone else's input on a relationship that feels right in your body, heart, and soul. It just feels unquestionably right. And if someone were to come to her and say, you shouldn't take him back or you shouldn't be with him, she wouldn't care because the knowing would be so strong. So she's saying to me, my intuition is saying I need to take him back, but I'm not feeling that in her words. I'm feeling a woman who's shaky on this and she's scared. And I've been in that same place. And I ended up saying something to her that like caused a physical reaction in her because it was so true. And I was just like, does any of this resonate with you? in your mind, do you think things like, I'm running out of time? I won't be able to have kids if I wait past a certain age. There are no men who will treat me better than him. It's not that bad. This relationship is as good as it's going to get. Do any of those phrases and so many more, I could keep going, cross your mind when you think of this man? Because if they do, that's not your intuition talking, that's your fear. And your fear is causing you to stay in this relationship because you do not believe that you could find and keep better. And she literally, we're walking. She stops kind of in her tracks and is like, you've given me a lot to think about and I need to take a break.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of truth for one sitting.
It was it was interesting because I've had many conversations on the walks like this, and so have you, where you say something, a very hard truth that ends up causing a huge life decision in someone. It ended up for this girl. I mean, I don't stay in close contact with her. These are people that I see whenever their intuition tells them to come on the walk. But in the case of this girl, our conversation could have made the difference between her starting that walk, giving him a second chance, and ending that walk saying, actually, no, thank you. And what I ended up telling her at the end, before I could tell she was getting overwhelmed with emotion and didn't want to continue too much longer, but I just told her, she was like, if you were me, what would you do? And I said, the highest perspective of me in this situation would say, if he's coming to me and saying, I'll never do this again, I'll never leave you the way that I left you, and I sat with myself long enough to know that I needed to take him back, it would be completely dependent on him proving to me through his actions, not his words, that he is a changed man. Because people can change. We are a different person right now than we were a month ago, by a long shot. But that doesn't apply to everybody. That applies to people who want to grow and prioritize growth. Not everyone does. And we assume that we project ourselves onto other people. We project, I like to grow. I like to constantly see what I haven't looked at, and I like to uncover all the rocks. Not everybody wants to do that. There are a lot of people who will go their entire lifetime never looking at this stuff, and that is okay. But we have to be honest about when we're projecting our own selves on other people. What I told her was, I would ignore every word he's saying and focus on his actions. He can tell you the prettiest words about how he's going to change and all things he's going to do. I would just smile and watch. And the second thing I would do is not get back with him romantically. I would tell him, look, what you did really broke my trust. And I need you to prove through your actions that you are a changed and changing man. And the only way I feel comfortable with that right now is if we are friends. And if and when there comes a day when I develop that trust for you again, maybe we can start dating again. But it is not a guarantee, because if you set up a situation where a man who's coming back to you out of comfort just gets to slide right back in to his old familiar ways in life, no man is going to change in that environment. You open the same door he walked out of. He's not changing in an old environment. And so you have to change the environment. You have to. And that's on the woman. It is really on the woman, like you said, to hold men to a higher standard. And okay, you want to prove to me that you're a changed and changing man? Fantastic. I'm going to be over here living my life. We can hang out as friends. And 6 months from now, if I really do feel like with no stakes, no romance, no sex, this is huge, I trust you again, great. Then we'll consider it. Or maybe you'll find someone even better in that period that you would not have even had the eyes to see if you just get back with this dude who says he's going to change. So I know I told that story saying I want to hear your perspective on it, and then I just gave my perspective. Pretty classic me. But now I want to hear what you think about that, because it really did. What a story.
I think it's a fantastic story. And I think so many women and men, but women in particular, are going to resonate with this. Someone's like, I'm going to change. See, I've changed, whatever. But the words fall flat. There's nothing to back them up.
Exactly.
One thing you did touch on, I think, is incredibly important. And one thing I really agree with is there needs to be this kind of test period. Like, if you really believe, okay, I do see a future with this man or this woman, to revisit it as friends. Because all you're doing is like, hey, here's the space to change.
Yeah, just no sex.
And this is
or
a big
cuddles.
thing too. No physical, sexual interactions.
Yeah, no intimacy like that.
Whether we know it or not, sex in particular ties biologically us back together. And so it's a lot easier, and we see this all the time, it's a lot easier to excuse inaction or excuse abuse when the sex is good.
Sex is the glue that keeps a lot of broken relationships together.
Most. So if that biologically changing or chemically changing in the mind action is taken out of the picture, we'll be able to think and feel into what's right a lot more clearly. So I think exactly what you said is exactly what I would say to her. Now, again, I fully believe someone can change. If you were never in my life and my ex-girlfriend saw the person I am today as opposed to the person she dated, I think she'd be a lot more likely, objectively, to be open to us getting back together. I don't want that. And even if you were not in the picture, I would not want that. But I'm saying I've changed. I feel like a different person at every level. Yeah. And so I'm not opposed to the fact that like the man or the woman can change. That's definitely possible. We all do. But everyone says they can change or will change. Very few people actually do change. Back to the whole New Year's resolution working out. Yeah. And so we need to see the action behind it. And if there is no action, put your fingers in your ears. You got to mute them, mute everyone around you, because the words are just going to fall flat and you're just going to get hurt again. And the thing is, like, hurt me once, shame on you. Hurt me twice, shame on me. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is because you should have known better. And we allowed this to happen again. And that same pain is going to be even harder to go through when you allow that abuse to continue. So I think the conversation you had with her was life-changing, 100%. And I think she heard exactly what she needed to hear. And now I hope that she is being an immense observer to his behavior. And if nothing has changed, she needs to cut her loss. This is one thing that keeps them on, though. Again, it's fear. Exactly. Because like, I'm getting a little bit older. She'll start having kids by now, married soon.
This woman is 25, by the way.
Okay, so she has some time.
I want to also mention something that she said. This is how you really know that fear is at play here, is when you start logically creating reasons for someone's behavior. So one thing she said to me was, I was reading these studies about how men don't have a fully developed brain until they turn 25. And he left me a week before his 25th birthday. So do you think that's related? Okay, if you're going into the research studies to justify a man's behavior, we lost the plot, ladies. Listen, nope. Because what we're really doing is we don't want to face the emotion underneath this entire situation. So we're just going to try to logic and solve. And why? Why did it happen? Let me figure it out. Some things aren't able to be figured out. Some things, especially romance isn't logical. Romance, especially for men, is based on a gut feeling. It is a visceral attraction. A man either feels it or he doesn't. And there's no understanding why. It just is or it isn't. And that feeling, the presence or lack of that feeling for a man is what dictates everything that happens next in romance. That's why, like we talked about in a previous episode, when you operate from, let me compare your checklist with my checklist, that is not a relationship that even feels right. When you're with that couple, it doesn't feel like there's a connection. Why? Because there's no feeling in a checklist comparison relationship. But that's where, with the abundance of dating apps and the supply of people, its never-ending infinite scroll of suitors and men and women, we have gotten to the point where we can filter people based off of mind attributes. You know, what are their politics? What's their religion? What activities they like to do? What's their height? What school did they go to? How many degrees do they have? Right? All the filters in the dating apps. That's not a feeling. That's why sometimes you'll like swipe left on someone on a dating app and you meet them in person. You're like, that guy's a Rizzler. Like, wait, like that guy
It's a
really?
catch. Yeah.
Like, and we see that in our show too, at Married at First Sight. We're watching another season right now where I just gotta shout this guy out because the recovery, they get married without seeing each other. So literally they meet for the first time at the altar. Wow. Like what a move. And this woman says to like the camera crew, you know, he's actually not my type and I'm not attracted to him. Within like 5 days, he has this woman geeking. Because why? Because he is so comfortable in himself, in his emotions, in his feelings, that he speaks so openly. They have this one dinner conversation where he basically says, I love you. And she didn't say it back because she has trust issues. It's actually a perfect example of this. And she feels very like afraid of expressing her emotions. She like basically thinks that she's weak if she has an emotion, which I think a lot of women, especially, you know, even me in the past can relate to. And he's saying all this so effusively to the point where it like kind of makes her uncomfortable, but he doesn't back down from it. He's like, this is just how I feel. And I'm not saying you have to feel the same way. I'm not going to pressure you. If you never say it back, that's okay. And he meant it. And that is the kind of behavior that gets you into a situation where you can recover. You can become the Wizard of Oz, back from someone who was previously, I had no attraction to this man, to she's giggling hee mode around this man.
And think about it.
Because there's feeling.
There's feeling, and he triggered the feelings within her by those statements. The I love you was that love feeling, of course, that compassion, the empathy, just the zest that we all deeply crave. But also, the most important part is it's okay if you don't say it back. Right. That is safety.
Right.
That is safety that people need to feel. Because when they know that you're going to love them no matter what, that is when you've created the freedom and the space for them to express themselves in whichever way feels right to them. And that's all humans want. That's all humans want. That is the basis of all business. That's the basis of all human nature. If you can help a human feel that way from a genuine place, you hold the keys to their heart.
If you can make someone feel like they can truly be themselves and you will love them no matter how they act.
That is 100% level 10 of safety and trust. Expressing love while also safe and trustworthy. That's what makes someone fall in love with you. That's what makes someone trust you. That's what anything you ever want in life. If you can genuinely give that to them, not just saying it, but they can feel that to be true. That's the key to human nature.
Well, it's interesting because that happened with you and I.
Yeah.
So if you tune into our last episode, we talked about our story, but there was a moment where Cam and I had this very emotionally charged moment at the Hyatt, and he said that he loved me. And then the next day basically said, JK, you're my soul sister, and told me this over text. And I didn't treat him any differently. I still said, I love you. Thank you for the reflection. You're such an angel. I'm so grateful for you. And I sent him a song. I did not change my behavior at all.
Just to add something on that, I didn't take back the saying that I love you.
Exactly. Yeah, you didn't at all.
Just the way you made it sound, like I can see why people might say that. I still made it very clear, I love you.
Yeah, you did.
But as a human, not as a romantic relationship. That was the decide for the second. I didn't take back and say, oh, I don't love you anymore.
Oh, no. That's a huge, thank you for sharing that, baby. Yeah, he basically said, I had, I can recite it because I have a good memory, because I had such a strong, overwhelming feeling of love towards you that I began to question if it was romantic. So I asked God to tell me in a dream if you were my person. And I woke up today and he said that you're not, that we are rather soul siblings. I love you.
Yeah.
So that's what Cam said. And this is the core moment here, though. My reaction to Cam saying this is big. Because if and I'm not going to lie, past version of me would be confused, maybe even pissed off, feel like, oh, this guy gave me the runaround. You know, we had this emotionally charged moment where he like stops everything, stops time and stares at me in front of a table of people and just says, I love you. And it's this huge moment. And I'm like a sucker for stories and romance. So I can get quite attached to moments that I think make a great story. And so a past version of me would be like, fuck this dude. You know, what's he doing? Running around. He just does this to everybody. But the funny thing is, like, that kind of person is somebody everyone loves, because that kind of person says, I love you, and doesn't expect anything from it. So this is what was really key. Because I had healed all of the things inside of myself that made love conditional, that made me say, I love you as a weapon to get things from someone, or to get safety from someone, to get a feeling of love from someone, or a feeling of being seen from someone. Instead of me saying, I love you to get something back, I had healed the part of me that needed anything outside of myself, because I loved myself enough to where my cup wasn't empty with little droplets in it. And I was like desperate, like, you know, anybody got some love for me?
Love me.
Please, anybody, tell me you love me. And when you shift as a woman from wanting to be chosen to choosing, that is what happens. You fill your cup in that journey to where if someone were to tell you, you know, actually, you're my soul sister, you know, I thought I was in love with you, but yeah, you don't have a reaction, because it's like, oh, well, I love spending time with you. You are wonderful. You're a literal angel on earth, and I just love you. And there's no difference. And I did not feel any differently. I actually found it very funny. And I feel like that right there, that moment of like, I was not angry with you. I was not like, well, fuck you. Why would you do this to me? I didn't call Cam or send him like, you know, a paragraph I wrote in my notes app being like, how dare you? Which I think a lot of people do. I think if you're doing those things, I say that with no judgment. I've been there before as well. It's because love is conditional in this situation. And I'm not saying that your boundaries have to be unconditional. I'm just saying your love should be unconditional. And if someone, especially in early dating, you have a really emotionally charged moment and the person's confused because of everything going on in their experience, and they come and tell you something like this, just let it go, keep it moving, keep loving them the same way that they would. And then look what happened. A month later, here we are.
Yeah. You also had the awareness to feel into me retracting it potentially being in the frame of romantic.
Yeah.
Was not coming from a place of a weapon or malicious
Oh,
for me.
yeah,
I was
never.
not saying certain things to make you feel a certain way and then purposely throwing it back a little bit, which a lot of men and women do.
Yes.
But you saw it as like, oh, this is literally just confusion on his end. He doesn't know exactly what he wants. That's all good.
Yeah.
You saw it from that end, so it was okay. And so you reacted as such. I can see how others, they may see this as not confusion, but a malicious weaponizing way. And still the best reaction to be like, okay, it's not to send a long text or to blow up your phone, whatever it is. But it's really important to understand, to feel into what feels right to you about what just happened.
Mm.
I really feel people aligned with their intuition know exactly the intentions of others. And when you know the intentions of others, not only are you not putting yourself in situations that you can be taken advantage of, but also just those people won't be gravitated towards you.
Exactly. And you won't invest, I think this is the biggest thing too, you won't invest any energy in people who don't feel right. And when you have no connection to your intuition, your inner voice, or your feelings, you don't have a good compass on who is the right kind of person who feels right to be in your life, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a job at a company, whether it's a lover. If you don't have a connection to your body, that signal is muffled. You can barely hear it. You can hear enough of it, though, to where you know something's wrong. But then your mind tries to explain and justify what's wrong. And the mind only comes in and steps in and tries to create the excuses when the intuition is muffled. So how do you fix that? You got to balance it. So if you're someone who would consider yourself an overthinker, if you feel like you spin anxious thoughts, you have racing stories going through your head about, oh, well, this guy said this to me, or he replied to my story, and like, what does it mean? Or if you consult people a lot, you go to your group chat, your friends. I used to have this friend years ago who anytime she would go on a date, she would text 10 people a voice note about the date. And this date wasn't going well. Like a lot of her, majority of her dates did not go well. So I imagine, just sit here with me and imagine this. Let's say this is you. You are this person and you're going on a date. It's not going well. Maybe he does something a little rude. Now you're sending text and voice notes, keeping everybody, all 10 people in the loop. You're now getting 10 people's responses, probably agreeing with you and saying, oh, fuck him, that's terrible, why would he do that? And your entire day is consumed with these negative emotions from other people amplifying your negative emotion. And I think a lot of the time we think that that's processing the emotion, but it's not. It's just giving it air to a chorus of people who are going to sympathize with you to make you feel more comfortable about the reality you're experiencing, when the much more healing thing to do would be maybe you have one trusted friend who you want to tell this to, not 10, not multiple, one trusted friend who is a positive person. Better yet, if they have what you are aspirationally wanting. Better yet, if your one person who you tell your dating life to is happily married in a relationship you respect and admire, because you sending that energy to that person, they are going to return amazing advice. They are going to meet you with compassion, but then also maybe bring your attention to some of your role in your own situation that may be happening here, like Cam was talking about earlier. It's really important to look at where are these stories coming from? Like, how are we going on dates over and over and over, having these same patterns, these same things happen? How are we creating the emotional environment and reality for this, and who we're telling and how we're giving it oxygen all day long and only talking about the negative things in our lives? So I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of people will do this thinking it's processing what's happening to them, but in reality, it's delaying the processing. It's a massive distraction from doing the healing to sit with yourself and say, wow, this guy said something to me and it really hurt my feelings. And I need to just cry. I don't need to angrily vent, even though that feels really good. It feels really good to have people like sympathize with you. But what would be more healing? What would like the highest version of myself do? Would they spend 10 hours telling 10 different people about their dating life? Or would they have one trusted friend who's going to give them really good advice, who also has the kind of life they would want to have in relationship?
But most people are at the state where they don't want that. They just don't want what's best for themselves. They love the drama. It keeps the group chat going, keeps the blood pumping through their veins. It keeps, that feeling, at least they're feeling something, right? The anger, the grief, the he did this, I can't believe him, whatever it is. People are actually fueled by that nowadays. They always happen. But if we want to evolve as humans, we need to get past that. And yeah, I think the solutions you came to, when it came to crying, when it came to feeling those feelings, if you feel the anger, the whatever else it may be, through your own container in a healthy way. And that if external advice is needed, not saying it always is, but if it's needed, you tell one person.
Yeah.
A trusted person that most importantly has what you want.
Yeah.
100%, because the more voices you put on, the more it's going to dilute the actual reality situation.
Yeah.
It's going to bring on more emotions. It's going to charge us more in a situation where we shouldn't be charged at all if we want to make a decision that actually feels right and actually makes sense to us. And so, yeah, I think it's a fantastic plan of action, I'd say, if that situation arose.
I love that, baby. I just love these conversations, sweetie.
Me too. They're the best.
And thank you so much for sharing so openly about your experience earlier. I think so many people will resonate. And I have never heard someone go on a podcast and say, I take responsibility for why I was cheated on. And I can empathize with the person who cheated on me. And I can see that I was not creating a foundation or environment of emotional safety for the woman I was with at the time. I just think that's a beautiful level of accountability to take.
Thank you.
To share.
Thank you. It is the only way to forgiveness. It's the only way to being free of what happened. If I didn't do that, I'd be destined for a lifetime of distrusting women, of hating that woman in particular. I don't want that for my life. I want to fully trust women to attract a woman like you, you know? Yeah. And so I saw it as necessary. And so I'm very, very glad it happened. And again, this is very, very important. I'm pointing the finger back on myself to see what role I played and to take full responsibility of that. But it is not to excuse the actions of others. There are terrible things happening to us in relationships and also as a collective, as a world right now. And taking responsibility for the role we've played, whether we're aware of it or not, is the way to overcome whatever's happening to us. And that's what I've been very grateful to learn at a young age and what I hope to apply for everything I come across in my life. Because adopting this understanding of what happened, all roles at play, especially mine, has catapulted me from what would have been one of the worst experiences of my life that I have so much hate and resentment towards still to this day, and potentially for the rest of my lifetime. I decided to use it as a springboard to catapult me into more aligned, higher version of myself. And if any moment we can choose to do that for anything we've ever experienced. And so I'm so, so grateful for the version of myself 2 years ago that decided to make that happen. And it's great to say, you know, because I envisioned the version of myself that I am today for the far majority of my life. And there were moments where I questioned if I was going to get there. But thankfully, not by grinding my butt off and doing so out of spite or out of hate or out of a need to be a certain way, but by consciously choosing to forgive others and love myself, I've taken all my power back. All of it. And it feels so freeing to know that even the people that have hurt you in your life, you have fully forgiven, you fully love them, and you see the lesson that took place in that experience that actually leads me feeling grateful and thankful for them. If you feel that way towards everyone and everything, you are unwavered and unstoppable. And you have the power to achieve your potential. And so I'm very grateful for my story. I'm grateful that I learned how to let go of it and process it. And I'm looking forward to sharing with the world on how they can do the same. But thank you for holding such great space, for listening, for loving me through this.
I always do.
And for being my greatest reward for all this work I've done.
Oh, sweetie.
Yeah,
you're my greatest reward for all the work I've done. Yes. Yes.
It's gonna be a good life.
It already is. Every day we say to each other, "Is today the best day ever?" And literally we say that every day. And that's just what it feels like.
Today's been pretty great too.
Yeah. Today has been pretty great. Even though Cam got 3 hours of sleep last night, somehow found the energy. You would not be able to tell this man is barely hanging on by a thread. I was up until the butt crack of dawn working on this podcast launch and my website. And I didn't need to be working that hard, but Old habits die hard, baby. My old 11:59 p.m. deadline submission self kicked back in, and it was like, it's time to cook. It's time to hit a 3 at the buzzer. It's time to make this happen.
She got that dog in her.
Listen.
She comes alive in the fourth quarter.
People don't think I got that dog in me.
Chef Curry up in here.
Exactly.
Cooking in the kitchen.
That's what I'm saying.
It done.
Kobe build.
Hey, yo. She's been hitting me.
Chill.
She's been hitting me with like basketball and like NBA 2K and football references. And it's blown my mind. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah. I mean, long live NBA 2K 16, 17. You know, that was a special time. Some of the best memories of my life spent playing.
So the other day, for you basketball fans out there, I don't know how many people listen to this relationship podcast are basketball fans, but she was like, do you think if Jalen Brunson wins 2 championships for the city of New York, that he'd go down as better than Steph Curry? And I don't know what TikTok post or what Reddit feed or Twitter reply you saw it from, but she says this to me like 11 o'clock at night. I'm half asleep in bed. And she says exactly what she knows will rile me up. Like, how dare you think?
You were like, where did you hear that?
Where did you hear that?
Where did you get that? That's so wrong. And it was hilarious. And so I've just been hitting him with some sauce, you know.
Keeps you on my toes. Keeps it fresh.
But this is the big thing I think that I've learned about how Cam and I create this feeling of trust and this feeling of joy. It's like little things actually just like that make the relationship so amazing, because I know how much Cam loves NBA 2K. So then I'm going to look up like funny things to say to him that are just like at the most random times that would just make him be like, huh? And like, that's just funny. So it's like, that's an element of me seeing Cam so deeply for who he is and his passions and what he loves, and me being a part of it in a way that makes us both laugh. So he and I both do that for each other all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you see me in my like big shirt, my like giant cotton shirt that I walk around in like a monk. And he like always mentions big shirt. Or this one day, like a week ago, I had made this joke because I didn't finish my dessert that we're actually going to go get this dessert right after this. I'm so excited. I usually eat all the little chocolate squares, but I left one little chocolate square. And then he said, "You didn't finish the dessert?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to save the last square for tomorrow as a treat for waking up." Then the next day, I wake up to Cam bringing me the chocolate square saying, "I have your treat for waking up." And it's that little thing. It's those little things that keep a relationship feeling so amazing. Like at little moments of being seen. That's everything. Like, it's not these big, grandiose displays. It's not the Kanye West level, I'm going to throw a concert for my woman. It's, I'm going to bring you this small little chocolate square because of a little one-liner you said yesterday.
And then a whisper in your ear, "Jalen Brunson will never be better than Steph Curry." Get you right back. No, but we keep it fun that way. I mean, we have a lot of ways. We're just weird people. And you guys, I think we have more and more access in our life the next handful of years. But we're just weird people. We keep each other on our toes. And we laugh a lot and have a lot of play.
Well, we laugh a lot. And also, like, we were talking about this in the car. We're not afraid to say something that's like so out of pocket. And I think that that's one of my like deepest recommendations to anyone when it comes to like, what we were talking about with trust and what the feeling of the relationship is. How you know you're not in a checklist relationship is if you can say something that like you're not overthinking, you're not trying to be funny, you're not attached to whether or not the person will laugh. You're just going to say this thing that's like a little bit out there that might throw that person off. Like, those are the moments where somebody feels like, damn, like you took a risk. Sometimes you swing the basket and you don't make it in there. Doesn't always work. But the fact that like you did that, not caring about how the person reacted, but a lot of the times I do get an AO.
Yeah.
I get,
Well,
"Hey,
how we're able
yo!"
to do that is because you don't have to filter yourself around me.
Yeah.
And we don't have to filter ourselves around anyone if we feel unconditionally loved by ourselves and from them.
Right.
And so there's literally nothing you can say that would make me like, how dare you? I'm packing up my bag 7 a.m. in the morning and leaving. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing, because I understand where your heart's at. I understand so much of you. And I love you unconditionally. And I feel it from you, that there's no thought that's not okay to have. That's such a fantastic place to build a relationship off of.
And that's exactly why in the first episode, when we were talking about cleaning and Windexing your mirror, that is what creates a feeling in relationship, because you are not judging yourself for what you're saying or for how you're showing up. And because you don't judge yourself, what you're saying doesn't need a response or reaction to be good or perfect or okay. You're detached from, I'm just going to say this thing, and if it lands, great. If it doesn't land, great. Whatever it is perfect. That's the most attractive energy you can be in, because you're fully yourself. If you find that you're in a relationship where you are suppressing certain things that you want to say, or you're like, oh, I can't say this because it'll make them upset. If you have any element of that, just know that like there's a mask there. Like you are actively wearing a mask. If you have a lot of moments throughout the day where you are not acting the way that you would act if you were alone in the room. If you are with the person in this world who makes you feel the most judgment-free and safe to be your real, authentic self, if you can't be that person with the person that you're dating, it's probably not the right person.
It's also a reflection of themselves. So not to say it's not the right person, because most people feel that way. It's also about the inner work.
Yes.
Right. So like, I'm judging others of what is acceptable for them to say or not. It's because I'm also judging myself.
Exactly.
So it's not necessarily 100% that's the wrong person. It's more about, do I feel free enough to say that? It's all a mirror to oneself.
Well, if you don't feel free enough to say that, there's a very good chance the person you spend the most time with also doesn't feel safe to say that. So that's the interesting dynamic, is that you almost serve as a literal mirror to the person that you're with. And that if I'm suppressing, they're probably suppressing. And there are cases where two people who are suppressing to the same amount can both commit to the inner work very deeply and rise and grow together. I mean, that's amazing and a really beautiful thing to witness. But I think a lot of the times what I've seen happen from people I talk to on the walks, from relationships on TV, from all of the travels of my life, is that when you have two parties in a relationship suppressing, one party decides to do the work, the other party isn't ready to do that work. And then there is a gap there that either like reveals that this is just not going to work long term, because now I don't want to suppress myself, but you still want to live in suppression land, right? So it's when you do the inner work kind of before a relationship, or you commit to being in a relationship with someone who also values personal growth and doing not just personal growth, because I'm not talking about like Huberman Lab podcast on I'm going to, make my body super healthy. I'm not talking about biohacking.
Talk about the inner work.
I'm talking about like really looking at your soul. Like that's a different level of personal growth that a lot of people, I mean, if you're even interested in that, like I really commend you and want to give you a big hug, because you doing that work to create an easier reality for yourself is creating an easier reality for everyone who comes into contact with you. And you are giving people such a profound gift by doing that work. So thank you. But not everyone in this lifetime feels called to that work. And I think that's the one thing that I really want to impart in this moment, is that if you are someone who knows deep in your soul, as you're hearing me say this, I want to go there. I know I'm going to cry. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be completely tumultuous in my relationship with myself for a little while, but I want to go there. I want to look at myself. Please do your due diligence on the person that you're in a relationship with, on whether or not they value that. And I'm not just talking surface level personal growth. I'm talking they want to get in there in the trenches of the dark night of the soul for themselves. Not for you, but like for themselves. Because that is when you will create this dynamic where if you are both suppressing to the same level, because I do really feel like we grow at the same exact pace at this point, because we had done so much work before we met each other, and now we're just like off to the races.
Synced.
But we're so synced. Like some of the things that we've been working through recently, one of them being this podcast, Cam, a couple months ago, was working on putting himself on camera more. And before he started doing that, I was doing that. So I had these meditation videos that I was recording every single day, and I did 31 of them. And I would meditate for 30 minutes and then record myself speaking. And that was my way of really shifting past a lot of insecurities I had about being seen on camera. And when I told Cam about this project, literally the day we met on President's Day, he was like, I'm going to do that too. And then he started doing Solitude 60 videos, which was basically the same thing, funny enough. So he started working on his version of being seen, his insecurities of being seen. And what I'm basically saying is that the person you're with is a mirror to wherever you are in your growth journey. And what you should really double click on, if you haven't already had this conversation, is what does growth mean to you? What is your relationship to personal growth? Where do you want to go? And if that's not synced, it's time to go inward, baby.
100%. That is the number one value you must have with the other person. It doesn't matter your hobbies as much. It doesn't matter, your career trajectory, whatever it may be. It's how willing are they to grow?
Yeah.
And it's the lack of that alignment that I believe causes the far majority of divorces, the far majority of marital problems to begin with. But if you're both committed and you both are willing to help each other in a loving way, you have the recipe for a very successful marriage, a very successful life together. That's the same with romantic relationships, but also for friends. If that takes place, you'll create forever friends and forever husbands and wives. Preferably one, not husbands and wives, but you know what I mean? Exactly. Well, y'all, I really appreciate y'all tuning in today for episode 3 of Listen Before Love. Yay! It's been a fantastic experience.
Oops. I got excited there.
Got really excited. Yeah. Can you tell them where to find us?
Where to find us?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. So you can connect with us on good old X over at Elle or the Cameron Hogan. This podcast is on literally every podcast platform. I made sure that happened today. And we also have little websites that I'll link below. But we are so excited to have you back for our next episode. God knows what we're going to talk about, but
something good, hopefully.
Something good.
Always.
Oh, and we even said we were going to cap this one an hour, and look what happened.
Yeah. An hour and 15. So thank you so much, y'all. We're really loving every single experience of this, and we're so glad to have you on this journey.
We love you.
Love you.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye, lovers.